People think of advocacy, oh, change the whole world system. No, it's one place, one step, one thing at a time, and a bite at a time you can chew. Get hooked up with some other people who are doing it. But it isn't, you can't change the world at one time. We can't even change the world anyway. But we can get engaged in something we can handle and do, and that we feel passionate about. And you know, it's a real simple project. You know, it's who's at the table and who's got the troops. This political system works that way. So that's what you got to do. Overcome all this stuff of the apathy and, oh, we can't do anything and all that. No, get up and get moving.
To be honest, advocacy work, you know, just every day, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back, it can get really demoralizing. And to work for somebody who's been in it for so long and has that long-term perspective and has seen big successes and also big failures, it just helps you get perspective yourself and keep going.
I've been working on homelessness for 43 years. I was on the first homeless commission. We created this continuum where people actually could move along in the continuum, where the homeless families that we'd worked with actually became homeowners. They weren't stuck in one place. So we do have conflicts amongst the advocates and providers that what we need is primarily just more subsidized, affordable housing primarily. But what we need in that is a plan to move people along, because there's going to be more homeless folks. We can't take care of every homeless person, and there are a lot of different categories in that. Mentally ill, drug addicted, this, that, you know, folks coming out of prison, this, that, families, children, all of those things are there. You have to sort it out, what is and what isn't. But the system has to be there's a whole industry around it that lives off of it in one way. And we have to set the system up not to just kind of keep growing that thing, but to incentivize the system so people can actually move and have an, you know, ability to move on and up to their full potential.
I work for somebody who has so much energy and passion, and you know, they're 40 years older than you. You're like, okay, I got to step up my game. Like, if he can do it for this long, I need to learn some lessons from him and keep moving forward.
The biggest thing that I can say about MANNA is no matter where you go, as soon as you say MANNA's name, people just respect MANNA. You know, whether they like what we do or whether they don't like what we do, they always respect what MANNA does, because they know that everything that MANNA does comes from a place of, you know, trying to empower people and trying to embetter people.
I started a program called Hope in a Home. I resurrected it in an organization that's for love of children, to help homeless families stabilize, get a home, stabilize their life, get support, and move up and out of that state of perpetual homelessness and poverty. We started that program back in the mid-70s, and the first round of the families were successful. They graduated after 3 years from these houses. You could buy a house for $5,000, and we'd just fix it up with volunteers. And they were successful, and we were sitting around talking. They said, we don't want to go back into a bad rental situation. We don't want to feel like we're going back. We've moved up. We're moving up now. So what? I said, what do you want? We want to own a home. Nobody in our family has ever owned anything. And so we said, okay, you could buy a property. They were basically giving it away here then. Nobody wanted to live here back then. So we began to buy property and fix it up and sell it. I had to put up my house. So my wife and I did. We had to get unconditional loans because they weren't loaning any money to low income. So we started that with one family, 2, 3 families who were successful, who never dreamed. I mean, they never dreamed they could do this, own a home. And that began, and we just grew it from there. And now it's probably, I know it's over 1,000, probably 1,500 or whatever in 32 years. We didn't have any competition back then. Nobody wanted to live here. Nobody was doing any development here. It was like a field of dreams for nonprofits. And we had actually foundations that formed a coalition that put money in to help us do it. So what's happened is we've become the victims of our own success in many ways. We started it, and they could see it. We did the White Law, we did the Nehemiah Project, we did whole blocks, we did over in Shaw, we've done over 500 homes alone. But what happened? For-profits began to see that they could make money. We want them to come on in. But now our competition is for-profits, and the nonprofits have had a really tough time competing with that. And many of them don't adapt. You have to adapt. It's a business. You have to grow it. You can't just sit still and think you're going to do what you were doing in 1980. It's not the same place. So they've dwindled. And then we actually had public money being put into our kind of development. For-profits don't do neighborhood development. They don't take projects that don't make money. And so we take projects and people that we don't have a bottom line finally of, we do it right, we do it business-like. We're not losing money, but we're not there primarily to make money. And so, but now all over the city, that's what's happening. People buying up property, holding it, all kinds of stuff like that. So we're competing with these entrepreneurs, you know, and we're having to be entrepreneurs ourselves in some ways. But we don't have the cash, we don't have the money. The city should be putting up the money to help support groups like ours to compete. But they don't have that vision, and they don't have that leadership, and they don't have the knowledge to do that now. In the 1980s, this city was the first, you know, we just got our home rule. These guys, Marion Barry and all the rest of them, Frank Smith, they were civil rights activists. So we finally could elect our city council. So what we have now, we had these activists, and a lot of the old white guys around used to complain to me who had been doing business. They say, it's like, they think the government's nothing but running the poverty program. It's like running the poverty program. I said, that's what they're supposed to be doing, getting the slaves off the plantation, for crying out loud. That is our mission. What's the matter with you? And now, of course, you know, that's been lost. The mission has been lost. I can't tell you how difficult it is to know what little we have to work with and what a lot of these other places who are supposed to be serving this are doing, and how little of their resources actually go into this. Foundations, churches, etc., that have a public purpose. And that's that mission, to liberate the slaves, whatever that means for anybody. And that's lost right now.
What we found on the housing side, and Jim helped start the Coalition of Nonprofit Housing and Economic Development, which is the main local coalition that we're a part of. For such a long time, housing organizations were fighting over the same pot of money. So they're being pit against each other, essentially. And so Jim came up with this concept of the coalition, along with others, Bob Moore, and a continuum of housing. And like, how can we advocate for all the stuff that we do together, and how can we have a vision of how every single type of housing that we do is actually connected, and people actually go through different types of housing over time, and how can we advocate for that together? And so that just makes you stronger. That makes you stronger because you have more troops, you have more organizations that are doing good work to go down and then advocate for what actually is working, and get lots of voices behind you to get resources for the stuff that is working, and to come up with new ideas too, and not be working constantly against one another. So that's when coalitions are great.
What's so great about MANNA and others, we're practitioners. You can't just go down there and scream and yell, do this, do that, change this, change that, and there's no model. There's no sense of how it would work, you know? So it's great to have the voice and the advocacy, you know, and the lobbying and all. And then it's also couple that with actually what works. That's a powerful combination. You have to push this pedal and that pedal and this pedal and that pedal. And you do have to have now the practitioner, you have to have the people, and then I think you have to have the research too. And you have to have the policy people in this as well as legal and all the rest of it. You just have to convince people to do the right thing, and you have to have the troops to do it. And back in the day, and we still can pull this out, we go into their office, take over their office, sit on their desk. They have to get arrested. We have to get arrested. You know, we have to have a nonviolent civil disobedience. You know, that's our legacy. That's our history. And you know, sometimes that works, but you cannot use that all the time. You have to use other means as well.
MANNA does so much great work, but the one thing I realized when I first started working here is MANNA doesn't really do much to promote what it does. You know, we, go to all these meetings and do all of these openings and, work with all these people in the community and build all these great relationships, but we never use those things that we do to leverage to build even more networks and to, create even stronger relationships. So the one thing I realized, I was like, I'm not really a digital media strategist or anything like that, but I was like, I do know my way around a computer. So I was like, well, let me do as much as I can do to, really try and, get our message and the things that we've been doing out there. And, over the last about 6 months, we've been pretty successful in, connecting with, leaders, organizations, think tanks, over social media and just, over the web in general. And, from getting them to, come out and testify for us or, even just, going back and forth with them to, strategize on different approaches to, making changes in DC. We've made a lot of headway, I can say, as far as like over social media and the internet.
My job is help to nurture these new ones into these places and to be here for them. And I'm still called to this, don't get me wrong. But my job primarily, as I see it, even though there are bumps in the road, is to help bring on this new, because, I'm still here, but the larger thing is you got to be nurturing. And that's a two-way street. One, me letting go of control, but then them understanding that people like me have something of experience and stuff they don't have. And humbling ourselves to work together that way. It's a great team. You've got to have several approaches in this. I don't say it's a game. It's more like a battle, a struggle, and you're plotting your strategies along with other people who are plotting strategies, and your strategies are to win, to change things for the better for your cause and your folks and what you're trying to do. So, City Council, Department of Housing and Community Development, the mayor, the chairman, the community, the media. You take all of the folks. You have to do all of these things really. And what I hope to do here with this effort on your part and Howard's part is to forge a partnership between folks who are doing research and policy and all of that. Where we're out here doing all this organizing, we got to have a research arm, which is a very powerful piece that complements and that puts it before folks. That really is what's been kind of missing for us. The values of homeownership, the fact that these folks, and the importance of programs that actually liberate people from poverty and all of that, and what does that, you have to have that. We need to have that. That's just to make a more holistic, strong case that's irrefutable, unless people are just totally against it. Government resources for helping people move up the economic ladder, that is a policy question now that is, it's not in hot debate. It's like we've lost. It used to be understood. This is how, subsidizing or having money that comes back or whatever, not just public housing subsidy, but money that goes into home ownership that gets recycled back. That's money that the city should be putting into that to help people move up the ladder. But people think, well, government shouldn't be doing it to help people build wealth. Government should be doing it for charity, for emergency services. Well, we have to change that policy now. Again, this is where we are right now. This anti-home ownership, this anti-move up and out of poverty, and using government funds not as a bank. They think of themselves as a bank now, a commercial bank with stockholders. This is public money. So how to use it most effectively? That's another policy question with all kinds of research that we can do and wed together to make the powerful case that we have to make. And you have to keep making the case.
The fact that MANNA has been around for such a long time and is known for doing really quality work, in addition to the advocacy that they do, it just makes our work that much easier because we have really strong ground to stand on when we go down and talk with policymakers or work with other organizations because MANNA is respected. And I don't take that lightly. I think that's something that is really unique here that maybe organizations that are just starting out don't quite have that. And that's benefit that we have coming in later on after so much great work has been done. We have that legacy to stand on and do greater work from there.
My biological father was mentally ill. Spent 19 years in a horrible mental institution in the 40s and 50s in Arkansas. Somebody got him and brought him out, basically gave him a job and a place. He lived on $3.25 a month. He did very menial jobs, washed dishes, sprayed for mosquitoes, city truck, loaded furniture. It's a whole story about the two of us and how that relationship. But he, at the end, became my hero. Because he had a potential, and he exercised that potential, okay? And actually bought a home, remarried, outlived her. And half of the house that he bought, half the money came to help our kids in school. Now, not everybody can do that, but I'm going to tell you, he's not unlike a lot of folks. But the system does not help people and incentivize people and help people see, if that person did it, I can do it, and move them, and just be very dedicated to moving folks. We got to have all these different services and whatnot, but not to stick people in one place. It's got to be all along the continuum, and not just homeless families. Low-income people are barely making it that are in these rentals. They're just a step away from that, and then helping them find a way and providing resources to move up. So you begin this dynamic system, not this static system. So that's what I preach. And I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. And he's about helping people move up to their full potential in life, to be liberated from that which oppresses them to the degree that they can be. And I'm a walking example of that as well. So that's just my background, where I come from and how I approach it. Well, my deepest agony is that we know what works, but we won't choose it collectively as a society. That's my deepest agony. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. And the struggle that it takes to get this done is outrageous. To get the government to move, to get all this bureaucracy out of the way, to get the policies behind it, to get the resources in there, it can be done pretty quickly and pretty simply in many ways. But this industry and all this around it is set. And we have to battle and battle about it. And then attitudes about low-income people, attitudes of all these attitudes. And then when you're low-income, you're born into this, you believe a lie about yourself that you're no good, that you cannot achieve anything, that you're a failure, you're misery, and you're stuck in this culture where everybody's sinking together, okay? So what happens when you see them down there? We don't have we have our folks showing up and telling them, look, this is what I need, I'm trying to get in, and then we have others saying, this is where I was and this is where I got there. It looks to me like we ought to be replicating some of this. We ought to be growing some of this, not just the pathology, not just the problem and celebrating it, as Bob used to say, but actually what works. And then focused on getting that out, and then statistics about how these programs are actually helping people do that, and measurables on that. That's where the research can come in more. And really, what are the metrics that we need to evaluate these programs on? But that's the biggest pain, and the biggest is that we know what works and we will not choose it collectively. The political will, the social will. It'd be rather to give somebody homeless something to eat. I mean, that's good. Put $1 in their hands, that's good. I've done that for the home, and then I've done my bit. But just don't, don't integrate me into the whole society and you become my friend and I become your friend and we're looking out for each other. We're building community here, the common good, and each person being connected to another, that really your welfare is my welfare. Your, Ward 3 future, you can't find anybody up there, is tied to Ward 7 and 8's future. But they don't see it. They don't see the connection. And they're not connected with each other. Really as neighbors and interdependent. That's what really is the difference here. But that's where the breakdown is, really, more than anything else. And then it's perpetuated by all this other stuff and the industry that's around it. There's a big industry around keeping this stuff going. Here's our mission statement. Don't ever give up. That's a frog in a pelican's mouth, and that frog has that pelican around the throat. Now, who's going to win? You don't quit. You don't ever quit, because it keeps coming back. You don't finish. You have to be diligent.